Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really diving into the life of an extraordinary figure, someone whose name just resonates with courage, Bhagat Singh.
Absolutely.
We've got this really fascinating collection of sources here detailing his life, from birth right through to his huge
A
impact.
complex figure for sure.
Definitely. And our mission today really is to try and uncover the key insights, maybe some surprising details, and
Mm.
understand the legacy of this revolutionary.
Not just what he did, but the why behind it.
Exactly. Why it mattered then, and crucially, why his ideas still sort of echo today.
Right.
So, okay, let's unpack this incredible story, starting right at the beginning.
Makes sense.
He was born September 28th, 1907, Banga village, Lalpur district. That's in present-day Pakistan.
And what the sources really bring out, which is fascinating, is that he wasn't just born into a family.
Right.
He was born into a truly revolutionary household.
Yeah.
I mean, his father, Kishan Singh, his uncle, Ajit Singh, they were already deeply involved in the freedom movement.
So it wasn't just background noise.
Not at all. It's foundational.
Yeah.
You really need to grasp that to understand the fire that started burning in him so early on. It was almost like an inheritance, this spirit of defiance.
Yeah, an inherited fire. And that fire, which was maybe simmering, it wasn't just intensified, it was really forged by one specific awful moment, wasn't it?
You're talking about Jallianwala Bagh?
Exactly. 1919, he's just 12 years old, and he visits the site of the massacre.
Can you imagine seeing that? The sources say it affected him profoundly.
Deeply. Fueled his hatred for British rule. The sources almost paint it as like the day his innocence died and the revolutionary was born.
Which raises that interesting question, doesn't it? How much can one single traumatic event shape a person's entire path?
Was it just that moment?
Well, it was definitely a profound shock. I mean, that blood-soaked ground for
Yeah.
a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
But it also seems to have acted as a crystallizing force, It solidified the ideals he was already picking up, people he looked up to, like Kartar Singh Sarabha. And it cemented his commitment to freedom, socialism, secularism, those core ideas. So not just an emotional reaction, but a real catalyst. It explains the depth of his conviction later.
That makes sense. And something else that really jumped out from the sources was just how smart he was. Intellectually formidable.
Oh, absolutely. Not just a fiery activist.
No. He was a deep thinker. The sources mention he was a brilliant student, went to National College in Lahore.
Where he got exposed to all this socialist thinking, revolutionary literature.
And he learned languages, Punjabi, Hindi, Urdu, English, even French.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which tells you something, doesn't it?
It really does. He wasn't just like passively absorbing information. He was actively engaging with complex ideas, really thinking things through.
He certainly was. And that's maybe an overlooked part of his genius. He wasn't just reading revolutionary stuff. He was shaping it himself. An architect of revolutionary thought.
Through his writing and editing?
Exactly. Editing journals like Kirti, Veer Arjun, Naujawan Farhad Sabha. He understood that the battle wasn't just physical. It was about hearts and minds, too.
Using media as a weapon, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. Shaping minds was just as important as fighting battles for him. A very modern approach, in a way.
So, okay, he's got the intellectual firepower. He's clearly willing to act. Then his path takes another sharp turn, right?
Yeah.
1928.
Yes, the Simon Commission protests and Lala Lajpat Rai.
Right. The British officer, James Scott, orders this brutal Lathi charge of violent crackdown with batons.
On a peaceful protest.
Yeah.
And Lala Lajpat Rai is badly injured, dies later.
How did that specific event, Rai's death, shift things for Bhagat Singh? His methods, his aims?
This is where his strategy really evolves, becomes more militant. Bhagat Singh, along with Rajguru, Sukhdev, and others, they decided they had to avenge Rai's death.
So they targeted Scott.
They intended to.
Yeah.
But in a case of mistaken identity, they ended up killing another police officer, John Saunders. And this really marks the start of his active militant phase.
Yeah.
What's crucial, though, is that the sources show he never regretted it. He wrote a lot justifying these actions as necessary, a response to tyranny.
Okay, so that's the Saunders killing, but then his next big public act seems different. Throwing bombs in the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi, April 8th, 1929, with Batu Kishore Dutt.
It does seem different on the surface, yeah.
The sources almost present it like a paradox, an aggressive act, but they say there was no intent to actually harm anyone. How does that work? What was the strategy?
Yeah, you've nailed the core of his thinking there. It wasn't about violence just for the sake of it this time.
Okay.
The sources are quite clear. The bombs were low intensity, thrown into empty areas, It was purely symbolic. A protest against repressive British laws being pushed through.
So the point wasn't to kill or injure.
No. As Bhagat Singh himself put it, the aim was to make the deaf hear.
Ah, that famous phrase.
Exactly. They shouted, "Inquilab Zindabad! Long live the revolution and down with imperialism." And then they deliberately let themselves be arrested.
Right. They didn't try to escape.
No, because they saw the courtroom itself as the next stage, a platform to get their ideology out to a much wider audience. It was incredibly strategic, using the legal system against itself, in a way.
That's fascinating, using the trial as theater almost.
A very powerful kind of theater.
And once he's in jail, the fight doesn't stop. He protests the discrimination between British and Indian prisoners.
Which leads to the hunger strike.
An astonishing hunger strike.
Yeah.
The sources say 116 days demanding equal treatment. It's hard to even imagine that level of commitment.
It really is staggering, and you have to see it in context. This wasn't just about food or conditions, though it was about that too. It was a profound statement about human dignity, about equality.
Even while starving himself.
His mind stayed incredibly sharp. That's what the sources emphasize. He was reading constantly. Marx, Lenin, Bakunin. Really diving deep into socialist thought.
So he's refining his ideas even then.
Absolutely. Embracing and deepening his understanding of socialism, this vision for a society where wealth and power aren't just concentrated, but shared more fairly. He basically turned his prison cell into a revolutionary university.
Incredible. But despite all the public support, the huge protests across India, the end was coming.
Yes. He, Sukhdev, and Rajguru were sentenced to death.
And on March 23rd, 1931, hanged in Lahore Central Jail, he was just 23 years old.
Incredibly young. It's heartbreaking.
Such a short life ending like that.
And the way the British handled it.
Yeah.
Executing them secretly at night, cremating the bodies hastily by the Sutlej River. They even denied his last wish to be shot like a soldier, not hanged.
Why do that? Fear a public reaction.
Almost certainly. But of course it backfired. Their deaths just echoed across the country, fueled even more passion for the freedom movement. Martyrs were created.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, it feels clear that his story isn't just about martyrdom, is it? The sources really push this idea that he was fundamentally an ideologue.
That's a really crucial distinction, yes.
What does that mean exactly? Being an ideologue in his context. How does that shape his legacy beyond just being a symbol of defiance?
Well, saying he's an ideologue means he wasn't just someone acting on beliefs he picked up. He was someone who actively developed, thought through, and articulated a whole system of ideas for a different future.
A blueprint, almost.
Kind of. His vision was for a secular, socialist India. A nation free from all kinds of oppression, all exploitation, not just British rule.
He put it so powerfully, didn't he? Even from jail. They may kill me, but they cannot kill my ideas.
That quote just perfectly captures his legacy, I think. It wasn't just about political freedom from the British.
Right. His Inquilab, Long Live the Revolution, it wasn't only aimed at the colonizers.
No. As the sources highlight, it was a protest against, quote, every oppression that suppresses human beings. Much broader.
Which really makes you think, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It prompts us to ask, okay, what does revolution even mean today? You know, in contexts maybe far removed from armed struggle.
And how do his core ideas, secularism, socialism, this resistance against all oppression, how do they resonate now? Or maybe even challenge how we think about freedom and justice today?
Exactly. His story isn't just history. It invites you, the listener, to really consider the deeper meaning behind those words, revolution, freedom, oppression, and how they might still apply or need rethinking in your own world.